You know, it's a very painful part of history, but a story we can all learn from. Emmett Till. It was the summer of 1955 when then 14-year-old Till was visiting family in Money, Mississippi from Chicago. He was shopping at a store there when he was accused of whistling at a white woman. That woman's family members kidnapped, brutally beat, and lynched Emmett Till. They threw him in the Tallahatchie River with a large metal fan tied to his neck. An all-white, all-male jury acquitted the men accused of his murder.
And no one has ever been convicted in the murder of Till.
But his memory lives on. I sat down with Till's cousin, who is the only living relative to see Till the night he was abducted. On any given Sunday, you'll hear this choir set the tone for worship. Today, they're singing to celebrate a man who found faith out of fear.
I said, God, I'm getting ready to die.
Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr. shares with this Milwaukee congregation how he met God after losing his cousin, Emmett Till, 70 years ago.
It's like a nightmare, but it wasn't a nightmare. It was reality.
The Reverend tells me he's the only living relative who was with Till the night he was lynched in Mississippi, days after whistling at this white woman, Carolyn Bryant Dunham.
If we could have disappeared, we would have disappeared. And I know what had happened was worthy of death.
Brian Dunham's husband and brother-in-law kidnapped Till from his great-uncle's home on August 28, 1955.
I remember the people coming to the house about 2:30 in the morning, and my grandfather didn't know what room Emmett was in and who's in the bed with, so he started where I was. In walked two guys. One guy had a pistol in one hand, a flashlight in the other, and I closed my eyes to be shot. Of course, they found Emmett in the third room, and of course, it's the last time we saw him alive.
The next time the Reverend saw his cousin was in this casket.
I was in denial. I went to the funeral. I said, that's not him. I was in shock or something. It was just unbelievable. I said, he's laying in the casket like that. But I think about his suffering, the suffering that he suffered that night, the screaming.
Emmett's mom put that suffering on display. It's a decision the Reverend doesn't know if he could have made.
I never thought about she let his body be seen like that. But she was a courageous woman. Every time I saw her, I had survivor's guilt. I came back and he didn't.
Have you forgiven?
Oh, yes.
It's a practice Reverend Parker Jr. preaches.
I said, Lord, forgive me my sin.
And a Christian principle that allows him to honor a cousin he knew as Bobo.
God said, vengeance is mine. So if you hate, you got to deal with God.
Till's lynching was the turning point of the civil rights movement. I remember decades later, the cover that appeared on Jet.
I've seen that.
And I didn't know the story until I saw that, but he was tortured, his body was mutilated, it was thrown into the river, his face was beyond recognition, and his mom insisted that the casket be open for the nation to see the brutality that was happening in the South.
I can only imagine as a parent what that must have felt like, but it was so intentional for her to do that, of course, as you mentioned, and to hear the Reverend relive that and kind of think back to all those years ago, it was really powerful to sit down. I think the most telling part of it all was he said that he had to forgive those people who did that to his cousin in order to move forward for himself.
So much to talk about this. And Till from Chicago, and that was the difference also from the North and the South.
Yes.
He wasn't aware
of
the Jim Crowism and the rules. And my mom went to visit her aunt in Tennessee, and she made the mistake of going to a whites-only fountain because it was cooler, the water. And she said her aunt like nearly broke her neck pulling her away because she didn't know. And that was the same kind of situation that happened to Emmett Till. So we have come so far.
We have come so far, so far.